Cool. Get this screen shared. All right, you got that? Good to go? So, okay, cool. So today we're going to walk through the goal setting system that we use at Beyond Strength Performance Nova. And I'm just essentially just going to show you exactly what it is that we do from a short-term perspective, from a long-term perspective, from just pretty much the tactics that we use, everything. So the entire system for guiding clients through everything. So we're going to talk about what the ideal is versus how things actually work, how to build the skill, because we always talk about it being a skill, going through the framework, the Smarter Goals framework, and how we actually articulate a goal, starting with the super short term and then working into our system for medium to long-term goals within the context of the gym, right? Because you could say a long-term goal might be 20 years from now, but it's like, well, we don't really deal with that long a time frame. So within our context, how long it is, and then implementation, and then Q&A on anything up to the course up until now. And I'll say right now, as we get into this stuff, as we talk about this presentation today, if you guys have questions as we're going, totally ask them about this. And then if we have time at the end and we can do some Q&A about last week and everything we've done this week, that's totally cool too. Word? So what we're going to walk away with today, our system. I'm going to give you everything that we do. You can pick my brain as deeply as you want to. If I can answer your question, I will. If I can't, I'm sorry, and I'll try to get you an answer as best I can. And then the skills and tactics that'll help you actually start to implement this stuff immediately. And then always there's action steps and workshops for, sorry, I thought Chris might have been dying out there, for actually building your coaching skills. So, okay, so the first thing that I want to give you a preface on goal setting and finding the right position for people. So a little story. Yesterday, my buddy Sean, who happens to also be Chris and my business partner at the gym, we decided we were going to go hiking. And this is right along the Potomac River where we live here in Virginia. And with Sean, I should have known better because he's kind of a maniac. And he's like a former recon Marine. He's done a lot of special ops work. He likes to have fun, is what we'll say. So we start walking out on the path. He's like, hey, let's duck out here and go out on the rocks. And we go out on the rocks and like we're cruising around. We're having a good time. I'm going up over stuff. And the reality is, without him taking me there, I wouldn't have chosen to go down there. I probably would have just stayed on the trails and tried to walk faster or do something like that. I wouldn't have pushed myself the way that he pushed me. So there was a lot of stuff that was like, I had to just do it. Like I had to make the decision that I was going to climb up over this thing, and it stretched my skills a little bit, and it was fun, but it felt like the right challenge. Like this is challenging, but it's within my ability. So we get to this one point where we had to like traverse down this narrow ledge and then go up over this one rock face. And I had to get to a point where I would have one leg posted here, holding with his hand, and then swing my leg up over. And I got up to do it, and I was like, I don't trust myself to do this. I'm not going to do this because even Sean was there. He's trying to hold my hand. He's going to pull me up. But I just didn't trust myself to do it. It was too big of a stretch, right? And that's how we have to face goal setting and everything that we do with our clients, right? We have to find the right balance between stretch and comfort. So there was a most of the time throughout this trip yesterday, I'm hiking around, I'm climbing up over stuff, I'm doing stuff that stretches my abilities but is within enough of a comfort zone that I still feel as though I can do it. But when I got to the point where I didn't feel as though I had the skill set, I froze. And it sucked. Like I was caught there on this ledge. I had to figure out how I was going to turn around, how I was going to go back down, how I was going to drop. And it really just stopped me in my tracks. And that's what we have to think about with our clients. And that's the whole, the stuff that we talked about last week about getting to know them, understanding them, so we know how we can put them in the position to stretch themselves to the point that they're still a little bit comfortable. One big preface there. The next thing, goal setting is a skill. So the thing that we have to keep in mind with our clients is that folks don't have to do this all that often in their day-to-day lives. Some people have great jobs and are very career driven or whatever, and they do this for themselves, right? So they have a little bit of skill. But the difference with those folks is they often don't do it in our context. And that means they really don't know what an appropriate level is for them in the gym, or what they can accomplish, or what is as valuable to them as it might be. So they have to gain some context before they can actually set a great goal for themselves. But a lot of folks, they really just do not have the skill because they just never have to set goals. And we need to keep in mind that being able to articulate to yourself what you want, project yourself into the future, and then figure out what you have to do to become that person or to get that thing that you want takes work. It takes reps, and we have to give them the reps for them to be able to set goals and follow through on them. And that's the biggest thing for us to keep in mind, because folks come into these kind of experiences just expecting that they should be able to set goals, and then they feel frustrated when they can't set a goal, and then they feel like they're not setting a goal that's up to your standards. So we have to make sure that we let people know this kind of stuff up front. That's one of the things that we do in our quarterly seminar for our clients, is we let them know, like, hey, goal setting is a skill, and this is something that we have to work on. So we need to tell them, and we need to keep it in mind for ourselves. So I say this because a lot of the times when people first start articulating goals, they're not going to be great, and that's okay. They might not be all that daring. They might not be that risky, which is something that we talk about a little bit later on in this presentation. And they might not be all that clearly articulated. That's okay. We need direction, and they need reps. That's really it. So we have to keep that in mind. Okay? So this, in our context, I believe would be the ideal scenario. We have one big year-long goal that we're going after, okay? Then we look at the quarter of the year. Each quarter of the year is a slightly smaller goal that builds to achieve that year-long goal. And it's kind of the levels system, right? So you would reach this level, and that would take you to the next level, which would be somewhat more difficult or challenging, and then that would take you to the next level, which would eventually accumulate in you achieving the year-long goal. We would break that down into smaller levels by monthly. And for us, we do it by program. That would lead to the quarterly or third, depending on how many times per week someone trains with you. And then from there, the weekly goals would break down into a monthly goal. So you would have your action items for the week that would transfer into your monthly goal, which would transfer into your quarterly goals, which would transfer into your year-long goals. And then there would be daily actions that feed them all. That is the perfect ideal scenario that in some instances we can create, but what we have to realize is it takes reps and skill to be able to get to this point. So we have to have some people in front of us and develop them as a goal setter before we can get to this point. And we also have to understand, it's the same. It's like the old Mike Tyson quote: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And things are going to change, and values are going to change for people, and what they want is going to change. But when we can get to the point where we can do something like this and stick to it and make the process valuable to people so they can continue to take action and build trust in themselves, people can knock stuff out of the park. So this is the ideal. But the reality is, like we talked about, we need skill, we need context to follow a system like that as it pertains to fitness goals, okay? So what we have to understand is we need to start simply and we need to start small. What can we do that takes the least amount of skill and presents the least amount of complexity? So we have to shrink the time frame to the smallest that we can work with in our context. So that could be the training session. It could be individual sections of the training session. And we look at the program for guidance with this kind of stuff. And this is where we really start to build skill. So it could be that we look at, hey, what do you want to get done with this training session, and give them a direction. We look at, okay, well, maybe it's just one part of the training session that's very important to you, and we're going to set a direction with that, okay? And we're going to talk about GAB as to how we use that to do this for ourselves. So we use something called GAB. What is this? This is something that we borrowed from motivational interviewing. So in their clinical context, they would do this at the end of a clinical nutrition or coaching session, where it would be like, okay, so they just talked about this. They got the person to the point where they would like to make some kind of meaningful change. And then they set a goal based on that. Okay, that would be for between the time from now until the next time they see each other. Here's the goal. Then they would set a confidence interval. How confident are you that you can achieve this goal? on a scale of 1 to 10, and then what could get in the way, right? So that's what it stands for. Goals, your confidence interval, and then the barriers of what could get in the way. So, but we take it, I was looking, and we started using this a couple years ago, and I was looking for something to better give our clients direction for their training session while also starting to build some goal setting skills. So we use this at the beginning of a training session to help clients set a direction for the day. And then this does a lot of great stuff for us. It gives them the opportunity to build that skill that we're talking about, because it's like, rather than having to look at like a month or even a week, they can look at the next hour of their lives or a segment of the next hour of their lives, set themselves a direction, act towards it, and show themselves that they can actually achieve it. And it works wonderfully that way. And then they get a lot of exposure, a lot of reps into building that skill. And then for us as coaches, it lets us know exactly what they want to be coached on and how they want to be coached that day, right? So here's how we do it. We look at the program, right? And we look at the goals associated with the person. So at our gym, all the person's goals or levels are listed at the top of their program. Then from there, we ask them about what they might want to do during that training session as it pertains to their goals or just something that might be important to them during the day. So for example, let's say that very simply somebody has a deadlift goal, or we know that they enjoy deadlifting and that's something that they've been focusing on. So we can look at the program and say, hey, I know that you've been really focused on your deadlift lately. Is there anything that you want to get done with that today, or anything else in general with your program that you'd like to focus on? Then they can give us an answer. Oftentimes they say, yeah, I'd like to be able to go up here. I'd like to be able to improve my form here. I'd like to be able to do X. And sometimes they're not sure. They're just like, well, I just want to get through the session. And then that's where we can continue to ask open-ended questions like, okay, so was there anything that you feel in particular that you've been struggling with? Or is there anything that you feel like you'd really like to excel at, or anything that's been going well or hasn't? And we can continue along that line until they start to give themselves a direction. Okay. And then when they do that, we're like, you can ask a simple question like, all right, well, how are you feeling about that? You pretty confident that you can get that done? Let's say maybe on a scale of 1 to 10. And from there, they'll say, somewhere between 1 and 10. And if they're not 8 or above, they're probably not really confident that they can get that done. So we want to change course. But let's just say that they say that they're an 8. If they're an 8, we say, great, you're an 8. Why didn't you pick 7? And when you do that, they can start to talk themselves into the fact that they believe that they can do it. They can come up with all the reasons why they can do it. It's almost like finding the bright spots first. And then once we get through that, we ask them what could get in the way. Okay, so what are the things that could prevent you from doing that? So it's like if someone wanted to go up and weight in the deadlift, well, I wasn't sure about my form last week, so I feel like that could be one thing that I need to figure out a little bit more before I add more weight. Great. We know exactly what we want to coach and what they want us to coach and how we need to coach it just from asking that question. What could get in the way? And then we can start to strategize with them about how we can take care of that. And we say, okay, well, I'll make sure that I'm really close by during your deadlift sets, and we'll get them going in the right direction. And then that way we all have a strategy. So they have a direction for the day. We've given them the opportunity to talk themselves into believing that they can do it. We've given them strategy to overcome anything that might get in the way. And then we can work together to have that positive outcome. Okay? Does that raise any questions for anybody? So let's say that they gave us a confidence interval that was lower. Let's say they picked 7 or 6. Like, well, 7 or 6, I mean, it sounds like you might not actually feel all that strongly about this. Is that really what we want to focus on today? And it's that simple, right? And the thing to keep in mind is a lot of these conversations can feel kind of sterile when you first start doing them. But as you get into the flow of it and you start to figure out how you can individualize them with people and just make them conversational, it gets much better. So the big thing is like, what do you want to get done today? Using their program and their goals as the direction. How do you feel about getting that done? You feel pretty confident. And sometimes you can leave it at there. Sometimes you don't need to give it a number. All right, well, what could get in the way? And then that way, everything can be accounted for, right? So our goal with that is we want to do this with new clients as frequently as possible because we really want to get into the habit of building that goal setting skill. So most people, when they first start training with us, they're doing 2 or 3 times a week. I want my guys to try to hit a gab session with them every time they come in. Then as people continue on, the goal for our coaches is just for each of them to hit 2 clients each per session. And per session means per hour that people can schedule to train with us, right? So If it's, we have 6, 7, 8, and 9 that people are scheduling, 2 people at 6, 2 people at 7, 2 people at 8, and so on and so forth for each coach. And obviously this depends on how many people are scheduled, right? But that is the goal. And then when is this done? Well, we really just figured out a better system for this because, quite honestly, some of this was getting missed. So we figured out a better system to do it. So when folks come into our gym to train, they have a readiness questionnaire that they have to fill on the back of their programs. So when they fill out this readiness questionnaire, they have to take it to a coach to show them so they can check in. And now we've just piggybacked our GAB sessions onto that. Okay, so whenever a client brings to a coach the readiness questionnaire, they immediately flip it over and go into a GAB session with them, and while referencing their programs. Okay, so that's the goals for it. That's how we get it done. And this is really the initial stepping stone for us to start building the goal setting skill. Okay, is that sinking in okay for everybody? Does anybody have any questions? Okie doke. We shall move on. So the next level is a little bit longer term, and this is our end of program chat. So imagine that you're a client with us, and let's say you just started. Now you've been training 2 to 3 days a week in our small group personal training program. So that means you've had around between 8 to 12 sessions of someone coming up to you and talking to you about setting a direction with your training, right? So you've had a fair amount of exposure over the course of a month to 6 weeks. So we've had a lot of opportunity to build skill with this person to give themselves direction. They've also been training with us. So now they have even more context of what they might be able to do here and what they might be capable of, both from a competency and a self-efficacy standpoint, but from an actual practicality, what can you do in this gym? What are the exercises? What are the things that we do? What can I focus on? And now they've had a lot of exposure to all of those things, and they can give themselves better direction. So, and I'm going to take a step back. When people come in and do an initial consult with Chris, they talk about goals, right? They talk about, if you could project a year from now, and everything went perfectly, what would that look like? They do that. But a lot of times the goals aren't clearly articulated, like we said before. The folks are still a little foggy. They're still a little shallow. They don't know how to get out the stuff within a better context and really understanding how they can articulate it better to themselves. So that's one thing to keep in mind. We do start with that. But like I said, we take it back, we shrink it to the short term, and then we start to expand back out and add in complexity and skill. So when someone finishes a program here, they fill out this form that you're looking at right now. Do you feel like you accomplished your goals? Questions, comments, concerns. Immediately gives them the ability to express themselves so that they can be heard. All right, so we can talk about that. What are the goals for the next phase? Where are we going? So that, why do you want to do it? And then creating an expectation. How are we going to know that it's working? How are you going to know it's working? And how can we make sure that we can help you? And we all know that it's working. Okay, so here's how the process works. When someone's on their last day, they'll come into our gym, and their program will be standing up. And it's a marker for the coach and a marker for the client that something needs to be paid attention to. And then a coach will typically direct them like, hey, you're finishing today. Don't forget to fill out your questionnaire on the back. They'll fill out the questionnaire on their own, interrupted by a coach. They go, they take a few minutes, whatever they do, they fill it out. After that, the coach comes over to them, right? And then they start to talk. They talk through everything that the person read. It starts with what just happened. So if we can go back, it just follows this. All right, so you felt like you achieved your goals, or you didn't achieve your goals. And then we talk about what the past program just held for the person. What went well, what didn't, and just an open commentary on that, okay? Once we get through that, we can start to talk about the goals listed for the next phase. Do they have a longer term goal stated? So we need to check in with that on the front of their program and relate it to what they just said. If it doesn't, we need to ask some questions about that and make sure that they have clarity on that, okay? Something like, I noticed that you said you want to do this, your level that you're working towards says this. Is there some kind of incongruency there? Are there things changing? So that way we can get clarity. That way we can reflect answers back to them to get even more clarity so that we're on the same page. And then from there, we can set a goal that they're clear about for the next phase. And then also we have clarity of the expectation. from there, the so that statement is part of that, is part of that conversation. So that goes with, how does this relate to your longer term goals? Like, oh, well, I'm working on X because it relates to my longer term goal of doing Y. Or we can, which a question we'll talk about a little bit later, is like, well, what value is this going to bring to your life? So it's kind of both of those things. And you wrap that up into that conversation. And really the simple thing is just using the program, the question on the program, and asking open-ended questions and reflecting them back to the person so that you can get on the same page. And then from there, how are we going to know that it's working? All right, so there should be a very clear expectation of, this will happen and I will know that I'm making progress, and this is what we can both monitor. And it's really that simple. From there, we go into, all right, so what did you like about this last program and what did you not like as far as an exercise standpoint? Is there anything that you don't want to see again? Is there anything that you really like to see on your program? So that way we can make sure that we're putting them into exercises that they feel good about. Now, of course, sometimes we have to veto stuff and sometimes we have to pull the coach card and direct them. Now, it's not like we're going to be stern or harsh about that, but like, if something's not the best fit for this person, we can help them make a better decision, explain to them why. Now, if there's anything within all of this that it would be necessary for them to write more, we'll redirect them to write, because them writing is more powerful than us making notes, because it's just like anything else. It's like making a declaration and making it real. It's more powerful for somebody else to write it than for us. Now, the reality is this conversation, while it seems like a lot, really should only take 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't take very long to get through all of this. It's just like having the structure makes it easy. Sometimes it sits down and we have people so good at doing these that they can sit down, write it out. We ask a few simple questions. Good with this? Good. All right, cool. And it literally takes like 2 minutes. But it's having the structure and doing all of the work that leads up to this to help build the skills so people know how to give themselves direction. Okay? So the result is the client's goals, wishes, and thoughts are reflected in the program. We take what they say and it literally directs our programming process. It should. This is to help them set goals and act on them so that they can bring them to fruition in the real world. Now they have aims for the next 4 to 6 weeks. They have something to direct themselves at as they come in. And then we can take that and turn it into gab sessions and make sure that their individual sessions are reflecting what their bigger outcomes are. We know how to help the person. We know what their expectations are, and we have a better idea of how to meet them. I think one of the biggest problems that trainers run into is that they don't know, they haven't given their clients clear expectations of how things work and what should be done within a certain environment. And they haven't gotten clear expectations of what their client wants. And then nobody's on the same page and everything gets messed up, right? We've worked on another skill set of building longer term goals. So now we're starting to deal with a month or a month to 6 weeks. It's a longer time frame. There's more complexity with projecting yourself farther into the future. There's just more to account for, and it's just generally harder. And now we're starting to work on that skill. The client feels heard and understood. So they come in. We ask them how things went. We talk about what's going to happen. They tell us what they want. And then we reflect that in how we guide their process when we write their programs and we coach them. And so it's like the client feels heard and understood. I was talking with one of my interns yesterday, and we said the two big things that people need. They need to feel like they're heard and understood, and they need to feel connected to other people. Those are the two big things. And I honestly believe that's why our gym has been so successful and has continued to grow, right? We connect people to other people and we try to understand them. And those are the two big things. Then once we have all this done, all of the pertinent info is taken and shared on our programming thread. So we're all up to date with what's going on with an individual person. And then as it goes right now, Chris does most of the programming. Chris can take that information and turn it into their next program. Right? And then put all of the goal stuff on the top so everybody's clear on it. That's really it. That is the simple process that we use to help people start to set a little bit longer term goals so they can direct themselves out for like 4 to 6 weeks. Okay? Now, I know some of you were really interested in this part of the process. Are there any specific questions that have popped up for you so far?
I guess for me is so I've done this on a couple of our members, and some of it's probably because we don't do a really good job of, after their first initial goal, once we get them there, kind of following up like what you guys do. But his next phase was all about body comp.
Okay.
So is that more of like the end of block, and then you breaking down kind of goals month to month that's going to help them get there? So are you thinking those goals are more like things that are about the gym, like stuff that happens at the gym, like them?
Body, not necessarily. No, this could be, I mean, the actions can still be reflected. So if he's saying like, that's where you can talk about what's realistic to accomplish from a body comp standpoint in 4 to 6 weeks and help them set realistic goals based on that. And then we can have the conversation about, okay, so some of that's on you, a lot of it's on you, and what your habits are outside of the gym, and not obviously being a jerk about how we say that, but making them have the expectation of like, of what you're doing and outside of here, and what nutrition stuff are you working on. And that's where we would direct them to like, hey, you have this body composition goal. Are you in the 16 weeks of fat loss nutrition coaching group? And if they're not, I would say, okay, well, definitely join the Facebook group. All of the habit work is in there. You're going to get support from the other people in it. Chris is in there helping you. So that would be a big thing to take a step towards. And if they are, we ask the question about like, okay, so are you following the habits and blah, blah, blah. And if not, like, well, let's work on what habit you could start with that. And then from there, we can also talk about the gym actions and consistency and the things that they need to do within the frame of that person to meet that 4 to 6 week goal for their body composition, whether it's, losing weight, losing fat, whatever it is. And we can have that conversation. So no, it's not just necessarily like a stringent, like I'm going to lift more weight or I'm going to improve my skill at this. It's whatever within the context of the person. So yes, body composition could totally fall into this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Good to go on that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anything else from anybody? Okay. All right. So now we go into longer term planning and we look at the end of block meeting, and I'm showing you the three, this is all from one person. The forms that we use to start planning this stuff. I'm going to walk you through all of it. But it starts with the form and the conversation based on that. So this is the outcome of somebody filling out the form. Their names on there, how they want to be communicated with, what their biggest long-term goal is, and that would be like their year goal. Okay, so if we could do something over the next 4 months that would take us closer to that, what would it be? Okay, so let's think of the next 4 months. How do we write out the steps that might take us closer to this? So just to give you some context, the guy that this is, that this came from, you see a lot of his longer-term goal is essentially better health and improved movement. But his goals down here are more strengths associated. But he's working on the nutrition and the extra body comp and the health stuff on his own. He really likes to come in here to feel stronger and feel like he's making progress with his movement. So it looks like it might not be congruent, but for this guy it is. So just to preface that, and that's really how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to take you to our form and kind of walk you through it, how they get it and how they get it in real time. So let me get that up and I'll share it with you. Okay. Okay. Everybody got that? Okay. So at the end of a training block, when there's a week left, the guys are monitoring the programs and they shoot a text to our programming thread that says so-and-so is on the last week of their block. And then that prompts me to shoot out an email to the person and say, hey, I have a canned response, which actually I can just show you. So I go here, canned responses, which Chris had to teach me how to do because I'm a Neanderthal. And this, oh shit. This is the email that I send. The guys let me know you finished a training block, blah, blah, blah. Another block down. another end of block meeting, give them a little context, past 4 programs, what's going on right now, and then plan for the next 4 programs. And then I shoot them that link right there. And that's what I send out to everyone when they're on the end of block. Okay. So from there, they get this and they fill it out. It's very complicated, I know. All right. So here's the thing. We want them to think about the next 4 months and give themselves some kind of a vision. And that's really what this question about the realistic magic wand is. From here, year or so out, it gets them to start projecting themselves forward and to think about what it might be like for a year out, and gives them a chance to write it. So writing is powerful. It makes people have to think. It makes people have to articulate. But here's the deal. Some people aren't good at this, and they're going to struggle with it for the first few times. And that's why the conversation is so important. This is just giving us the initial information that we can start to talk about things. So what happened over the next, if we could wave a realistic magic wand, what happens over the next 4 months? What will you have done? What goals we have achieved? How will it positively affect your life? Write it out. And then from there, it instructs them to break that down into levels. Now, I will tell you, I'm going to rewrite this. It's not as good as it could be, and I don't like it, and I think it's confusing people. It's not getting them to say things as clearly as they can. So as soon as I update how I write this, I will let you know. So really the goal with this is, and I forget what I stole this from. I think I stole it from The Power of Moments, and they stole it from somebody else, is you increase the level of difficulty like a video game. Okay, so let's say let's make a simple one. We'll just do a deadlift one. Let's say the next 4 months, you've increased your deadlift by 40 pounds. Okay, so then we could look at what would level 1 be? Okay, so maybe it's passing the strength standard so you can move on to bigger and better deadlifts. Then the next thing might be progressing from the barbell RDL to the rack pull. And then from the rack pull, maybe you work on being able to gain more tension. And then from there, you work on being able to set a PR with the rack pull that takes you to your 40-pound goal. So it's some kind of simple breakdown like that. It's often more convoluted than that, but that's the simple breakdown. Okay. Then how would you like us to guide you through these levels, and how can we hold you accountable? Then they can talk about what they want from us from a coaching level and how they feel like we can help them walk the line. And that's really, that way we're just setting expectations so we know how they like to be coached and what's going to work from them. Any other questions or feedback? And then how would you like to hold your end of block meeting? So there's 2 things here they're huge, right? So first, how do you want to be contacted to set up your end of block meeting? All right. So that way, preferred method of contact, which is something we changed just a little bit ago. But first of all, when we do it that way, it shows that we're paying attention and we're listening to them. And then second of all, it's more likely for us to be able to get the response that we want in a timely manner, rather than having to wait to get these done. Sometimes it takes people a minute to get this stuff done and back to us. I'm being honest with you, but this increases the chances. And then how would you like to hold it? Right. Again, this shows people that we're listening to them and we're trying to meet them where they're at, which is big for that whole trust thing that we talked about last week. You want someone to talk about your goals and what they really want, show them that you're listening to them, show them that they're understood. And then from there, we just added this, if you're likely to refer a friend to us, because, well, this is a great time if people are being really successful to ask for referrals, because, I would much rather have people like the people that we have at our gym. And this was guided by Chris, so don't think this is me just doing this. We would much rather have people like the people that we have and not spend a ton of money to get new people in, because the more money we have to make our gym better rather than spending on marketing, everybody wins. Okay. So they fill out this form. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. Son of a biscuit eater. Okay. Having a hard time. I'm having a hard time with technology, guys. There we go. All right. So then we go to this. All right. So I've read all of this. Walk me through it. I want them to start a narrative about what they did and what they chose. And then I can start to talk about specific sections of the thing. Okay. So read all this, walk me through it. Then they can give me a general view, the gist, and we can start to break it down. From there, I'm going to go back. I don't want to get into this yet. We walk through all the sections. Okay. So talk to me about your long-term goal? What does that mean for you? Like, why do you want the improved movement? Why are these things so important to you? And then they can start to talk about that. And then that way, if they've got a lot up here on the long-term goal, and they kind of have an idea of what their magic wand would look like, but they're not so clear on being able to set goals, we can start to pull that out. Okay. And we can start to talk about what levels might be. So for example, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, and then we'll come back and talk about the wheel. So the other day, I was having an end of block meeting with one of our clients, and she just felt like she couldn't come up with what her levels might be. She's like, I just don't know. And I said, okay, well, talk to me about this. Let's look at it this way. The magic wand. You've waved it. What will you have done? What will your life look like? And what will your life feel like? And what will value all this bring to your life? Like, why is this going to be good? And going back and asking this question in real time after giving the conversation some context sometimes brings out some things that really helps people. So I took a picture of the back because I wrote some notes, okay? So that was so she will feel more confident and her body will feel better again. And it's like, okay, great. I love that. I want that for you. What are the things that you think you could do? What are 3 things that you think you could do that would help you make that a reality? Doing more cardio on my own, things she wanted to do that she valued, increasing her consistency, and eating better were the 3 things that she thought she could do to really prove to herself, to make her body feel better and to get her confidence back. This is a really, really stressed out woman. So I'm showing you this because sometimes when you get to this portion where you're having the levels, people don't know how to articulate it. And sometimes the real-time conversation of like, okay, so you have this magic wand. What are the things that you think could take you to get to that position? And just asking that kind of a question can put people in the mindset to be able to do it. Because a lot of times we think better when we're talking than we do when we're writing. That's one of those things of human nature. Like, thinking is a motor process that connects us to thought. Talking is a motor process that connects us to thought. And sometimes sitting there and actually being in the conversation helps people pull things out of themselves like this. Okay. So that's really just, I follow this sheet. I ask open-ended questions about each section that's been set up. And then we go deeper on how to actually make the plan happen as we need to. Okay. I will say that while I try to follow this structure, each end of block meeting is a little different. Each has a little bit of different flavor, depending on the person, depending where I think I should start with people. Sometimes I start with this, and sometimes I just start with a general, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And just chatting. There's always a little bit of small talk, but really staying on that longer to get a feel for kind of where they're at and what they'd like to talk about and what might be the best place to start. And there are often times that I start with our Where Am I At wheel. Now, this is a tool that we came up with a little while ago because one of the deficits that I saw with us is like we were trying to help people set these long-term goals, but they didn't have a real good, clear picture of where they actually currently were. And it's like, well, it's real hard to project yourself forward if you don't have the understanding of where you have stability or where you lack stability right now. I came up with this. Well, we came up with it as a team. I came up with the idea because I took one of our coaches to go see Jordan Peterson talk. And you can think of what you want about the man, that's fine. But the thing is he has some skills for helping people figure out where they're at. And he's worked with a lot of clinically depressed patients. And he went through a criteria of things that he goes through for people that are clinically depressed, that like, okay, so where are the areas that you might be able to work on that would give you some directions? Like, what are the main things that people need so they feel as though they are well-adjusted and happy in their lives? And he said something that I can't list them all, but it's like having a vocation, having intimate relationships, having friends, having an avocation, how's your family? Like looking at all of these things that you could examine and then do something about. And I was like, well, we need that for our clients. We don't have anything like that yet. So what I did was I took a bunch of notes that night. And I came back to our folks and I was like, this is the tool I want to create. Let's talk about our clients that are doing the best and the ones that have had the best transformations and actually kept it. What have they done? What are the things about them that have made it work? And then we sat there and we came up with a list of clients and we thought through all the things that they were did. And these are the 8 things. These are the 8 things that really have helped people in our environment change and then keep that change, right? So it touches holistically every part of what someone needs to do to create a holistic lifestyle change. Now, you could argue that this is a little beyond what a strength coach or a personal trainer is supposed to do, but it's like, hey, if we have the skills to help people as deeply and as broadly as we can, we're going to do it. So this is the tool that we came up with. So when someone comes in and we do this part of the meeting, we have this really great "Where are you at?" card. So we used to just do it with we have a Word doc with all of this listed on it. And Chris did a good job doctoring that up too. But he came up with this card, which is beautiful. And it's actually cards that we hand out to people as well. And we use them in our initial consultations as well as our meetings, our end of block meetings. So now what we do is we walk through this card and I have people self-rate based on that. So I say, I'm here to answer any questions you might have, maybe give you some direction, but I'm not going to rate you. We can't rate them because we want to keep our relationship as unconditionally positive as possible. And if we start rating people, then it's like, oh man, well, they have to do stuff to please us because they're getting praise from us, and that is dependent on how well they're doing. And we cannot put ourselves in that situation. We can't put them in that situation. It's just not healthy. So we have them self-rate, but I'm here to answer any questions that they might have. So then we start walking through it, and we go down, and we start with the top 4. Do you have anything that is your commitment to something purposeful? What are your goals in the gym? Do those goals attach to anything else? Is there something bigger that the gym is feeding? And most people have that. They do. Most people are like a 4 or 5 on this. Are you finishing your programs in the consistent amount of time? Let me take a step back. I have people think about these within the context of their life as well. So it's not so stringent because there's always going to be some relativity that somebody can fit in there that's going to be a little bit a shade of gray and isn't so black and white. So some of it is black and white, some of it isn't. Are you training consistently? Simplest. Are you finishing your programs in the appropriate amount of time? That's the easiest designation for consistency that we can give. If you're training two days per week in our small group training program, it should take you 6 weeks. If you're training 3 days a week, it should take you 4. Are you generally doing that? If you're trying to do anything outside of the gym, like say that you have a yoga schedule that you go and you do, are you following that in the way that you decided that you wanted to follow it with the desired frequency? Do you have a system for checking in on yourself? What's your nutrition like? We follow a lot of you guys have seen our pocket nutrition guide that we have. Are you doing the things on there? Are you mostly G's and Y's on your nutrition ratings on the readiness scale? Are you getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep? And this is just simple stuff to walk through because, sleep and nutrition, like if we're not doing those things and we don't have something that we're directed towards, it's really difficult to do anything else. So these are really, really big, important parts of transformation that if people want to change. Then from there, we talk about these. Outside the gym, active self-care, creating mental space and connection and support. So are you doing things that you enjoy outside the gym? Are you generally enjoying your life is really what that question is. Are you generally taking care of yourself, or are you just doing the stuff that you come in here? So are you doing some kind of stretching at home? Are you getting manual therapy? Are you foam rolling? Are you just moving around? Are you doing something to generally take care of your joints and your frame? Do you have a way to shut off? Because we found just like being able to create space for yourself is huge for the rest of your life. So you can have some focus and you can make the transitions that you need to make. And people that don't do this struggle. And then do you have people that are supporting you? Do you feel as though you're connected to other people? So that's that whole connection and feeling understood thing. Those are the 2 biggest things. And when we can make people feel that way, everything else kind of falls into place. So we go through this and they rate themselves. And then it comes out and they get a score. So this is from a recent meeting that I just did. So the first score was done in January, if you look at the date there, January of this year, and then about 6 months later, just last week. And you see that she improved drastically. 6 of the 8 measures, she got better. But here's the thing is like when we sit down and do this, this is mostly an awareness tool. Now, do we use this to help people drive change and figure out what they want their actions to be? We absolutely do that. But I don't sit there and say, okay, well, your active self-care rating is really low. Do you think you might like to do something about this? That's not how I approach this. I say, hey, so this is what it is. Do you see anything there that you'd like to address, or are you just cool with just having this awareness right now? And I can tell you, in January, when we did this with this lady, she's like, I have a lot on my plate. I don't feel like there's anything that I typically want to address right now. So we didn't. But here's the thing, just having that awareness helped her change her behavior. It just innately drove her in one direction. She started doing things a little differently. I'm not saying it works that way for everybody. And I'm not saying that it's always just best to leave it as an awareness thing, but that's how we approach it is, here's the awareness. Is there anything you'd like to do? And when they do want to do something about it, we help them craft a plan. So from there, the magic wand question in real time, we already talked about this. So from there, it's like, okay, so how can we help them craft the plan? So the biggest thing that we are driven by as human beings are positive emotion and negative emotion. We want to avoid negative circumstances, and we want to approach positive circumstances. We want to help people get pushed more towards being in an approach mode rather than trying to always avoid. But we need the balance of each to have that motivational tension, right? So helping people paint a picture of what it is that here's the state that I really don't want to be in, right? It could be their current state. It could be anything. It's like, hey, so what's the worst? If you don't do all these things, what happens? All right, so but if you do all of these things, what's the best thing could happen? What is that? And having them really give themselves that picture allows them to figure out where they're at. So it takes the, oh shit, I'm going the wrong way. Hold on a second. It takes this and puts it into a little bit of an abstract that allows them to figure out, okay, well, I can attach to this emotionally. So it's good to have this awareness that's practical and see like, oh, I have a shape and I want this shape to be like this. But then we have to have an emotional attachment to where we're at too. I know I don't want to be this. I definitely want to move towards this. And then having that emotional tie helps a ton. Okay. So then sometimes I have people write this out. Like when I first started doing this, I would give people like 10 minutes, like, all right, write out your hell, write out your heaven. I know you guys do it when you come into the faction. We used to do it in the end of block meetings. Now it's more of a conversation piece, unless we feel like we really need to do some visioning. We want to act to approach. We want to act to avoid, but we need to be able to articulate that to ourselves, or we can't. We're just lost. Like everything just feels jumbled up. Okay. So I will say we don't have to do this every time, but this is a tool in the toolbox, and as are several of the things that we're going to follow. So let's say someone did want to make a change, or they were having a hard time figuring out their levels. These are the tools that we're using. Okay. And sometimes using the wheel will help people go back and figure out their levels. It's just having these tools and then having just being a coach really, and just being in the conversation with the person and then being able to pull from your tool set. It's just like having a progression and regression system on the floor, right? If you don't have that system, it's going to be really tough to make the change on the fly. But when you have the tools and you can think through what might be the best one at the time, then you can do it. Same situation, same exact situation. Okay, so let's say it's similar to what I did with the lady with the magic wand thing the other day. It's like, hey, well, what are a few things? Okay, so let's say that someone wanted to make a change on their wheel. Like, let's say they did want to do more active self-care. Okay, and they were like, well, okay, well, I don't know where to start. Well, what do you think are 5 things that you could do? And then they can list them out. But here's the thing. Sometimes people need more context than that, and you need to help them a bit more. So what you could do as a coach with more understanding and more context is list out some potentials for them that they can choose from. So maybe you put out up 10 or 15 things that they might be able to think about they could do. Okay, choose 5 of those. What are things that could be most impactful to you or most appealing, something that you feel like you get started with? They list those out, okay? And just another thing, we got this from Stephen Ledbetter from Habitry, which I haven't seen that in a while, but we were at the Mark Fisher Fitness thing a few years ago, and I heard him talk, and I was like, man, I really like this. And so we fucking stole it. There you go. And then, so you get 5. Okay, of those 5, what are the 3 that you're most willing to start with, or you think that would be the most impactful for you right now? Cool. Which one of those do you want to start with? Now you also have this whole list of things that you can go back to once they get that one thing done. Great. What are we going to move on to now? Is there anything else on here? Or do we need to do another 5-3 first? But you continue to use this to really help the person generate ideas and then choose the thing that they want to take action on. Remember, like we talked about last week, people want to feel as though they're competent. All right. So they're choosing something that they feel as though they can navigate well, and they want to feel self-directed. They're making the choice. We're not sitting there saying, you're going to eat more sweet potatoes, Susan. Like, they're choosing the thing that they want to do, right? It works really, really well. Okay. So the end of block results really come down to this. The client has gained clarity and awareness of where they are in their transformation. They have something to project towards. They have direction for the next 4 to 6 months. If you're a 3-time-a-week client, it's 4 months. If you're a 2-time-a-week client, it's 6. We have action steps to move towards their goals. The client feels heard and understood, and we know what we have to do to help them. Both from a programming standpoint, we can take this information and it shows up in their program the same way that it does from the end of phase. Like, we take the levels and we list them at the top of their program, but then also everything that we talk about is reflected in there. And one thing that I didn't mention that also happens is, just like at the end of the phase, hey, is there anything you want to see in your program this next time? Is there anything you really, really hate and don't want to see? That also goes in there. And now we know how they want to be coached too. We have a grander idea of how they want to be coached on things, and we can break that down into smaller segments throughout the day. We know what potentially we need to gab about. We know what things might be more important to them that we need to pay more attention to. All of that kind of stuff. It all fits into this, okay? So then, let's say that we have someone and we work through this in the end of block meeting, and they have a hard time figuring out how to actually articulate a level or articulate a goal that they want to say. How do we put that into the best form so it's understood by them, it's understood by us, and it can be really well followed through on? We like the SMARTER framework from Michael Hyatt. I think it's way better than just the SMART framework, and I think it really gives people something more actionable to work on, and it covers all the bases of goal setting. So here's how it goes. It needs to be specific. It can't be some vague thing like, I just want to read more. That doesn't work. Measurable. We need to actually be able to look at it in real time and say, how is this working? It needs to be something that you can actually act on. Not just a nice idea. It needs to be or four. Earlier when I told you the story about doing the rock climbing yesterday, there needs to be a certain level of feeling as though it's risky and it's stretching them. But there are some people that need a lot of momentum first, and it can't feel all that risky yet. They need to build the self-trust and prove to themselves that they can do something. And then you can start to give them a little bit more risk and a little bit more risk and a little bit more risk. But sometimes you really got to start at the not so risky level. But for the most part, and for most people, it needs to be a little bit stretched because it's motivating. We like to feel as though not necessarily 50-50 chance of failure, chance of success. Sometimes it's a little less. For some people, it's a little more. They really want to be stretched, but we need to have a little bit of that. But we need to keep in mind that some people just aren't ready for that yet. Time keyed. It needs to have a time. We need to have a deadline, or we need to know when we're doing it. It needs to be exciting. The person actually has to give a shit, and it needs to be relevant to their overall vision or their overall longer term goals. Both of those things. Okay. So here's an example. By August 31st, 2019, I will have successfully eaten 1 palm's worth of protein at every meal so that I can instill the habit of eating enough protein. This will help my health and my body composition so that I look better and feel better about myself. It puts the value that it's adding into their life. It's specific. It hits, It hits all of this, and it adds in the value of what they're going to get to life. Now that's a goal statement. All right. So when we can take things and we want to help somebody take those ideas and put them into paper in a way that they can do something with them, this is the framework that we use and that we teach people to use in our 16 weeks of fat loss. Well, we call it something else now, but the name's escaping me, so it's not all that important to you. But the seminar that we do every quarter for our clients. So getting it done. I love this. What are the 3 things you want to do in the future? Get a girlfriend, kiss her, rule the world. That kid's awesome. So what are the things that we need to do to get it done? So we have this really nice goal. That's great. It can still live out in nice idea land without the action steps to get it done. So we need a schedule. When will you do the tasks that contribute to the goal, or when will the goal be completed? That comes into the time keyed. What do you need to get this done? And I think this is one of the things that people really miss on. And when I do the when I do work with in-depth clients in our in-depth program with Strength Faction, this is one of the biggest things that I help people think through. It's like, okay, great. You got to get this thing done. What do you actually need to get it done? Because if you're sitting there trying to figure that out in real time, you're going to be slow, or you're going to get frustrated. And then the likelihood that you're actually going to accomplish what you want to accomplish is going to be tough, right? So what do you need? Do you need a book? Do you need a conversation? Do you need whatever it is to get the task done that you need? You need to think through that first, okay? Accountability. How are you going to walk the line? Here's the thing. If you really, really want to get something done, that's the biggest source of accountability that you can have. Like, this is actually meaningful to you. And then from there, you can actually use external sources to help you. Like, how can a coach check in on you? What can you do? Who can you put around you to help you get this thing done? What could get in the way? And this is just like a longer term gab, right? What could get in the way of you nailing this goal? And here's the thing. There's always something that could get in the way. And especially when you're first sitting down and talking to people about this stuff, it's like, nothing. I want to do it. I don't see anything get in the way. There's always something. And we need to sit there and think through people. And sometimes it's just as simple as asking what if questions. And asking a what if question gets somebody to think about, okay, you know what, you're right. And then they can start to lay those things. Because if they're just boogeymen hanging out there in the darkness and we don't have them, illuminated, there's not shit that we can do about them. And then when we pop up, damn, it's too late. There's nothing we could do. We don't have a strategy. Okay. So we strategize. What can we do about the things that could get in the way? And then that way we can list them out. And then that way we have action items in case. So when are we going to do it? What do we need to get it done? How are we going to walk the line? What could get in the way? What are we going to do about what could get in the way? Okay. Once we have the goal set. So here are your action steps for the week. All right. I want you to practice. And listen, if you can get 3 of these things done, that would be great. If you can get all 5 of them done, killer. Here are 3 things. I want you to get at least 3 things done. Practice gab with at least 1 client. Have an end of phase chat with at least 1 client. So you might not have the form yet, but you have the structure. Pull 1 client aside if you're not doing this already and practice it with them. And if you are doing it already, but maybe you're not as consistent, practice it with them even more. Write 1 smarter goal for yourself. We have to experience this stuff from some level before we can really go and help other people with it, okay? So I want you to craft a smarter goal for yourself. Help at least 1 client craft a smarter goal for themselves. And I want you to start to construct an outline that's similar to this but fits your setting. From the reason that we keep people around so long is because we can do stuff like this and we have this kind of structure, because everybody's like, we got them through their first goal and then what? Well, we have to continually check in. And having a system like this continually helps people make progress and gets people farther down the path. And that's our big goal, right? We want people to develop. We want people to do better. And having a structure like this really helps people do it. But also, client retention is really important for a business. And this system will help you do that as well. Okay? So these are the action steps for this week. And that's it. So with all of that stuff, what questions do we have? Hi, Mike. Nice to see you. It's been a while.
Good to see you too, Todd. I know it's been a while.
It's been a while. It's nice to see you, man. Do you have any questions? Sinking in?
Yeah, sinking in. It reminds me of all the stuff that you and I went through when we did on the coaching portion of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It all resonated.
Great. Well, I'm glad you get to see it another time from a different view. So, Don, how about you? Any questions?
I got one just real
Awesome.
quick. So earlier when we were talking about the levels and you compared them to a video game,
Yeah.
do you have another metaphor that you can draw for that as opposed to, I have some clients that are, 60s to 70s, and I would like to start using this a little bit better with them because they're very resistant to setting goals. But a video game's not really going to work.
Sure. And that's what I'm working on a better analogy. I think it could be like, hey, talking to them about you could even make it like, what are 4 things that would take you closer? Like, we're going to work on this for a month. We're going to work on this for a month. We're going to work on this for a month. Or just like, you can think about it in increasing difficulty. What might one thing be that's just a little harder than the next that takes you a little closer to that big goal that you want to achieve? I'm with you. I don't like it. I'm changing it. But right now, it's what I have to show you guys. And like I said, as soon as I have it changed, I'll show you how I've changed it. But I think it's as simple. A lot of times I do just break it down with like, all right, what are the 4 things that we can work on? And you can go through the 5-3 first and then just help them set priorities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about increasing difficulty. It could literally just be about setting the right priorities.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions, guys? Anything from everything so far? Could be even last week. Patrick Strupe. That's how you say it, right? Strupe.
I've heard that once in an airport when I was late for a flight. Mr. Strupe, would you report to the gate, please? I'm not French. I'm not French.
From Kentucky, baby.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. No, you live in Kentucky. You're from Georgia. But how about you, buddy?
So nothing about like really the process and just implementing those things, because I kind of do some of those already. I do have a question about, did you guys get somebody to build that into your website or not?
The form?
Yeah, just like all of that.
We did
Like,
that. It's a simple app. It's called, well, Chris might use a different one for the BSP Nova page or website, but for Strength Faction, we just use something called Formidable. And if you run do you run a WordPress site?
I have, but I right now run through Wix.
Okay, so I'm sure there's some kind of widget or plugin or whatever the hell you want to call it, and we just have that on our WordPress sites. It's called Formidable, and it's really easy to use.
Cool, because right now I'm like, I print off those things, like, I guess the end of phase questionnaires and all that kind of stuff, but I'd like to start doing some of the end of block stuff, just kind of automate it like you guys did.
And we did it print out for a long time, and it didn't get done as well. And that's one of the reasons that we went to the hey, they finish up, we shoot them an email. And then that way it's like they don't take this paper with them, they don't lose it. Like, because the end of phase stuff never leaves the gym. It's always here, but like sending them home with the end of block form, it was just a pain in the ass. And a lot of people would rather type than write. Yeah. So
do you guys get a lot of feedback as far as people not wanting to fill those things out?
There's a handful. Most people will fill it out. Most people struggle, and they'll make some kind of comment about like, this isn't very good. And it's like, that's okay. We're going to talk about it, and I'm going to help you through it anyway. But we have people that don't do the meetings, that don't want to do the meetings. And we have people that going back and forth between doing them and not doing them. And there's some folks that are scared to set goals, and they're not really there yet. So it's like way too big of a stretch for them. So we do like mini direction. It's like, hey, you just want to show up and train and you're happy with that. That's cool. Show up and train. There are some people that just like schedule wise, the meeting doesn't work for them. So we don't do it. And we just use the form and we work off that. And then we check in with them in real time in the gym. So not everybody does it. We don't say like, we don't put it out there. It's like, hey, this is optional. We say, hey, we just put it out there that it's part of the process, but we're also not jerks about like, hey, I really can't get back into the gym for this, or I can't, it's just like, that's fine. We'll make it work.
Right. I like the option of, I'm not into this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and we've had one person recently say that they don't really want to do it. So
yeah, I have a few that are just like resistant to doing the end of phase fill outs. I print those on the back of their pages and just hand it to them at the end of their workout and like, hey, can you hang out for like 5 minutes and finish this for me? Or, we'll finish up early and we'll do that. But some of them are like, the one word answers, or I don't really feel like doing that. It's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's a balance, right? I think it depends. It's like, you have to meet people where they're at with that stuff like that and be like, okay, all right. Well, making sure that they understand the benefit is one thing. And I think another thing is like with us, it's part of the culture. Like, this is what we do here. And you fill it out, and that's just part of how it works. And that's indoctrinated in them early on. And that's somebody asked me in another format if we get pushback on stuff like that. And it's like, we don't, because it's just like, it's what we do. That's what happens here. And from early on, that's been the culture. So it's like, as people come in and they get indoctrinated, which might be a poor word choice, but they get put into that system, it's just an expectation. So it's like going forward with newer clients, and if that expectation's set up front, then it's just like, oh, well, when I go see Mr. Strupe, he makes me fill out the thing. So,
Yeah, most everybody does it, even some of the older ones, but some of my older clients are kind of resistant to, just like you talked about, resistant to change, and, it is what it is.
And you know what? You can still help them otherwise, you know?
Yep.
So it's just, it's great. It's a great tool. It helps them. It helps us. But at the end of the day, you can still solve the problem another way too, you know? So I hear you. Word, brother. What else, guys? For those of you guys that were on last week or watched last week, I felt like I sucked so bad because I had a migraine the whole time and I felt like I couldn't think and I felt like everything that I was saying didn't make sense. It was awful. I was like, these poor people, like they wasted all this time on this and I have not saying anything worthwhile at all. So, but
You mentioned that on the call, Todd, and I felt you were good. I didn't see like.
dude,
like,
I felt
it's
awful.
tough. It's tough when you have those headaches or that for you, but you sucked it up and you did. I feel like you did well.
I appreciate that. I'm glad that it went well for you guys because I was like, oh man, I feel terrible. Now I was like, I'm going to send them articles. I'm going to do all this and make sure that everything was as clear as it could be. And I'm going to send you guys, I'm going to pull out more excerpts from the book for all of this stuff too and post it in the group as well. So you guys can read all of that, you know, ahead of the book coming out. So, and it'll give you some more detail on some of this stuff. So cool. What else we got? Do you guys need to stew on things for a little bit before you have the questions that you might want to ask? Okay, that's fine. Anything from last week? Anything in general that you guys want to talk about while we're here? We got time. That's fine. No worries. Cool. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for showing up and hanging out with me for a little while. And if you need anything, just if you have questions on this stuff, just post them in the group and I'll hop in there and answer them or, you know, get a hold of me and we'll get your questions answered. Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Todd.
Thank you.